Well, good morning. Good morning, everyone. If you wanted to know what a political junkie looks like, just look around you. I would like to ask just to start out that we have a moment of silence for Frank Lautenberg. I'm John Weingart. I'm Associate Director here at the Eagleton Institute. We started these morning after programs in 2000 to have them after the primary and general election. And I like to say that politics hasn't been normal since then. I'm not sure it's cause and effect, but and one of the the major questions that was not addressed yesterday was whether we will have to have morning after programs on August 14th and October 17th now, in addition to one we've planned in November, but we will get to that. So we obviously have the events to talk about that we had anticipated having talked about, as well as the ones that have flowed from Senator Lautenberg's death on Monday. And we have four people who are here to help us make sense out of this all and think about it in perhaps different ways, and then we'll open it up to questions comments from everyone else who's here. Walt Kane is an investigative reporter with News 12 New Jersey, and Matt Katz is a reporter with the Philadelphia Inquirer and also the writer of the Christie Chronicles, which you can follow. And Joan Quigley is a former state assemblywoman from Jersey City. And Tom Wilson is with the Kaufman Zita group and was the chair of the New Jersey State Republican Party for a number of years. So I thought we'd start with the two reporters, comments from them, and then move on to Joan and Tom. So Walt, if you want to give your thoughts about yesterday's results and where we go from here.
Well, I thought, first of all, the results of the election yesterday, as is so often the case, really not much of a surprise. And I think that's so often the case on primary day and even on general election day. And I've seen this now for 25 years. It seems like even when there is such a sentiment of politicians are bad, throw them all out, there always seems to be an exception for my politician. Throw them all out except for my guy. My guy's pretty good. And that's always been an interesting phenomenon. Fortunately, it seems like there seems to be the same thing sometimes for journalists, because we sometimes rank even below politicians on the trust scale, but they like our journalists, so I'm okay with that too. But I do think, obviously, as you guys know, there are tremendous advantages for incumbents, with obviously name recognition being one of them, and the ability to raise money. So it's difficult to upset them. I don't think there was really too much of a surprise. Margin of victory was about what we would have expected. The one thing that I wanted to talk about that I was struck by, because we talked a little bit about the special election. As I was looking at the headlines this morning, there was an NBC News Wall Street Journal poll that came out that said that Chris Christie is the one politician in America who transcends party politics. He has support by both Democrats and Republicans, and so as a result of that, he is the one guy who's bigger than party politics. And it struck me as the timing of that was just so ironic that it came on the same day that he did the special election, a couple of weeks before the general election, with obviously he's not going to say it, but the apparent purpose of holding down Democratic turnout on the November election. I do think that some people may be getting it wrong when they think that it's about his personal margin of victory with Bono. I think it's more about legislative seats. I think he's trying to keep Democratic turnout down and give as many Republican candidates as possible a chance to take seats in the November election. But listen, I mean, I think it's bizarre that the pollsters interpreted it that way. I mean, yes, this is a guy who has very strong personal crossover support, but we do have a two-party system, and he is a Republican, and obviously he's going to do what he can to help Republicans. And to think that just because this is a guy who has strong support with Democrats and independents, he is somehow an independent candidate, himself, or he is, he's hit, as Tom was saying, or outside, that he's somehow reached Colin Powell status. I mean, he's not. That's not who he is. He obviously is he is a Republican, and he's going to behave like that. And he's not the first governor of either party to use his power to schedule a special election in a way that benefits his party, and he's not going to be the last. So I guess those are my thoughts.
Okay. Matt.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here. It's interesting. I was at Christie's victory party last night. He had a 92% margin, I think, were the last numbers I saw. And the Christie camp was actually pleasantly surprised. They were expecting something in the 80s. He had a nominal Tea Party challenger, and they were actually thinking he might, that this guy might get 15%. And the backdrop of that and almost everything at this celebration last night was 2016 and what this means for 2016. So if he can secure 92% of the Republican vote in New Jersey, then maybe that means that all this talk of him not being a real Republican and of him not being somebody who can win over the Tea Party, maybe it's not as real as some may think, and maybe he can win a Republican primary in 2016 in the presidential race. There was a sense, in Christie's speech, he didn't mention Barbara Buono's name. He spoke about, in very kind of subtle tones, about kind of, maybe not even that subtle, reclaiming the Republican Party. He linked his election in 2009 to the Republican takeover of Congress in 2010. And then he said, we're going to kind of do that again. And Republicans in New Jersey, through me, are going to show how Republicans can once again be dominant in this country. So there was this sort of sense of inevitability that this election is basically over. He's going to beat the pants out of Barbara Buono, and then he's going to go on to something bigger and better. Meanwhile, over at Barbara Buono's party, she was making direct attacks and talking about the issues that we're actually going to hear about. That property taxes are still up, that the unemployment rate is still higher than the national average, that Planned Parenthood clinics have closed because of this governor, and that's kind of the stuff you're gonna hear from her, and from him he's mentioned her name in commercials so far, but I don't know. I don't know if he'll kind of look past her. And I would. It's interesting what Walt was saying about the down ballot Senate races, down ballot legislative races, and why he scheduled the election in October. I tend to think it did have more to do with margin of victory. I buy into this idea a little bit that he really wants a large margin of victory. He wants to go to Iowa. Let's assuming he wants to run for president. Let's assume that. He wants to, I think, go to Iowa in 2016, tell a conservative crowd, hey, Planned Parenthood clinics have closed because of me. The minimum wage was not raised because of me. There's no gay marriage. New Jersey's the only state in the Northeast without gay marriage, and that's because of me. And yet I won by 15 points in a blue state with 700,000 more Democrats and Republicans. So I'm giving you a conservative agenda and show I can win in a Democratic-leaning place, and that's why you need to send me to the general presidential election. So I do think margin of victory must have had something to do with the scheduling an October election away from his November election. But obviously, yeah, he's a Republican. He's concerned and wants Republican legislators. But he did not mention Republican legislators last night. He didn't say anything about, we need to win, I need to win, and you also need to send Tom Kane back to the Senate so he can be Senate president. And he didn't mention that. Tom Kane was there. He spoke before him. The leader of the Assembly, the Republican leader of the Assembly, John Bramnick, was there and spoke before him. But Christie didn't mention their names. So I don't know how. I mean, I don't know how much. I don't know how those two factors might play against each other.
Joan.
Well, as you all know, there were no surprises last night. There are very, very seldom any surprises in Hudson County, so I wasn't expecting anything there. But I was watching the whole state, but focused a little bit on Hudson. Two things happened there yesterday that made me very concerned. 6 o'clock last night, I'm standing on a street corner in Hoboken, and a man comes up to me, introduces himself, and says, I'm a lifelong Democrat, and I just had a very distressing situation at a poll. Well, I thought he was going to say vote suppression or something. He said, 6 o'clock, I was the #1 ticket for the Democratic Party in Hoboken. I said, oh, that's bad. And he said, and the 2 people behind me were registered Democrats who were furious that they couldn't vote in the Republican primary because they wanted to vote for Chris Christie. Wow. So this is a bad thing. If Hudson County, the most, or at least the second most Democratic county in the state, is not coming out to vote for Barbara, I think she's got a problem. I mean, she's got a bigger problem than we said. I've always thought she doesn't have much of a chance of winning. But the arguments she's got are strong, as Matt said, and they're not resonating. It may come down to the question that I think it was Ronald Reagan raised, are you better off today? And most people are. And whether it's Chris Christie's credit or Chris Christie's fault, I don't know. But I don't hear the sense of unhappiness that you would think the job numbers and the unemployment numbers and the tax numbers would give you. So looking on to the future, I agree that when Chris Christie or his people made up a list of why we should have a vote and what's good for it and what's bad for it, among the things on that list were probably not having the Republicans in the state Senate who would like to run for the U.S. Senate be exempted or be eliminated because they can't run for 2 offices at the same time. So allowing them, all who want to run in October without being kicked off the ballot in November is a good thing. I also disagree with Matt just a little bit because I think Governor Christie looks stronger nationwide if he's got a Democratic legislature. And he says, depending on the audience, I worked with them or I trampled them. But if he's got a Republican legislature saying, yes, Governor, anything you want, there's no story there. So I think he needs the story as well as the votes.
So, Joan, I can assure you that this morning in that gentleman's precinct, Barbara got about 900 votes. So it all worked out fine once the votes were actually counted. So somehow it always works out in Hudson County. My sense is that there's very little you can take away from a primary that you can use to look forward. Right? Primaries are weird elections. They don't bear any resemblance to a general election because of who decides to participate. But who decides to participate, and I think Joan was alluding to this, can begin to tell you something about levels of motivation. And when you look across the state, while Democrats outnumber Republicans by 700,000, there was a lot of places where Democrats just didn't bother to show up to vote in the primary. They're not there. Meanwhile, you got Republicans frothing at the mouth in order to get in and push the button and say, I voted for Chris Christie today. And apparently you have some independents and some Democrats who did as well. So that's something to keep your eye on going forward. It's clearly connected to this bigger question of an October special election and motivation. Where this ends up, I think we know where we all know where the gubernatorial election is going to end up. I think Joan hit it on the head. At the end of the day, the issues get very complicated, and you people have a gut feeling. Chris Christie, this idea that he's risen above politics and become this populist figure, and that's really it. I mean, we've now created this sort of iconic populist, or he's now created this iconic populist persona that is somewhat unpredictable when it comes to politics. He thinks outside the box. He acts outside the box. He does things that seem to be contradictory, but he simply, matter of fact, tells you, nope, it's because that's what I thought the best decision was. It wasn't the conservative or the Republican or the Democrat or the liberal decision. It was the decision I thought was the best thing for the state of New Jersey. And so, this casting of himself over the last 3.5 years as, a no-nonsense, I mean, I was saying to John before, how quickly was this decision when to conduct the election made? I mean, if nothing else, talk about a decisive leader. Very complex set of inputs to consider here. I was one who immediately said this is going to end up in court. There's no way this is not going to end up adding to what is already one of the most litigated seats in the United States Senate. It will now become absolutely, because whatever he does, if he picks this, if he picks 2014, the Democrats will sue, et cetera, so forth. Within 24 hours, virtually, perhaps slightly more than 24 hours, he had taken all of these myriad considerations that were out there, legal, political, civic, etc., practical in terms of costs and how do we actually, these poor candidates who are going to run for the Senate have to file a petition on Monday with 1,000 signatures. Monday! It's going to start raining, I think, tomorrow, and not stop until Sunday. And sorted through it all and said, that's where we're going, let's go. And he won't waver, he won't, that'll be the way it is. So it's, that feeds into this sort of, it's about leadership. Right? At the end of the day, when people cast votes for the big offices, it's about how do I feel about this person? Do I think that they're going to do a good job? Because I don't know, they don't go through this process in their head, but their gut feeling is, I don't know all the issues this person's going to have to deal with. I couldn't even begin to think about how complex some of these problems are. But do I think they're a good decider? No one's going to say Chris Christie's not a good decider.
And the contrast with John Corzine is fascinating because when Corzine was elected governor, there was nothing more predictable than that he was going to have to find somebody to take his seat in the Senate. And it took him, I think, 7 weeks or so to settle on the name that everyone knew he was going to settle on anyway. So it is a dramatic contrast. I want to ask you all about the legislative races. I mean, my impression has been that there are enough, particularly Senate seats, that could go either way, that the Republicans could pick up the Senate. And I would think that would be a good feather in the governor's cap. Maybe not to win both. He might be better off not winning both houses, you suggested, but to be able to go to Iowa or wherever and say, not only did I win in a Democratic state, but I helped bring in people on my coattails.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what Joan is saying in terms of the idea that part of the narrative is that I single-handedly beat the legislature into submission, but I think the other narrative could be, not only did I effectively govern a blue state, but I actually converted the legislature over to Republican. I mean, I think he wins either way. I think either way. I mean, if there's one thing that Chris Christie excels at, it's crafting the narrative. I mean, he's a guy who
crafting is an interesting choice of words.
He's a guy who
imposing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a guy who manages to to be his own biographer in an amazing way. And we're in an age of not only of traditional media, but you've got Twitter, so many people struggle to just keep up with the message, and I'm not quite sure how he manages to control the message as effectively as he does. It's really that may be the most impressive feat there, and I'm not sure if anybody else can even follow it, and how much of that is just endemic to that. I mean, and I think it's like no matter what you say about him, it sounds like a bad pun, but it's that larger than life sort of persona that he has.
I'd be surprised if the legislature turns over. The redistricting has made it a pretty favorable map for Democrats, and it would be a surprise. I mean, it's possible that nothing changes at all. That from people who have spent a lot more time looking at the numbers than I do, they think it's probably just going to remain exactly the way it is. One advantage to it turning over, if it were to become Republican, forget about the optics of it in terms of Christie being able to change the political persuasion of the legislature. It could help him get an income tax cut, whatever you want to call it. It's really a tax credit, but if he gets a tax cut, that would be. I mean, that's like the cherry on top for his 2016 presidential race. And a Republican legislature. I mean, he may get it with a Democratic legislature. But a Republican legislature would definitely give it to him, and that would be maybe more helpful than even saying, "Hey, I turned the legislature Republican." Forget that. I actually cut taxes. And he still may actually get that through the Democrats. I mean, the Democrats, particularly in the Senate in this state, have been as close of an ally as you can get with this governor. I mean, you could easily make the argument that he's done better with the Democratic legislature than he could have in any other kind of scenario. They have not been an obstacle. He's gotten a lot of his priorities through. He's a master at, he calls it bipartisanship. Other cynics call it transactional. I give you this, you give me that. And he's been really adept at it. And he also benefits from Democrats in the state, particularly in the South, particularly the Senate president, who ideologically are sort of conservative. And they kind of agree with him on, cutting benefits for public workers and things like this. So, I don't think it changes, but either way, he'll be okay.
It is amazing by contrast to Corzine, who had Democratic
Right, couldn't get
control
along
and
with
was
it, yeah.
paralyzed and,
Right.
and couldn't get his legislature moved.
Right.
Well, one of the problems with Governor Corzine is whoever talked to him last had the greatest influence. I mean, so it was rather difficult to negotiate with him because you couldn't guarantee that he was going to do what he thought an hour ago that he just might do. But crafting the message of Governor Christie is got to be miraculous, the way they do things. But his delivery of the message is so important, too. A couple of examples. It drives me nuts every time he gets up and says, gets a standing ovation from the Republican side of the legislature, I balanced the budget 4 years in a row. Everybody's balanced the budget, all the way back to the Revolution. The Constitution calls for it. That's no big deal. You go to jail if you don't balance it, so it doesn't deserve a standing ovation. The other thing is when he talks about poor Dr. David Rosen, the OLS budget man. I mean, David Rosen is so close to accurate. And Christie says he was wrong before and he's wrong again. He's wrong by like $22,000 on a $30 billion budget. But people go, oh, yeah, he's wrong. I don't know why they believe the governor in despite of the evidence before their eyes, unless it's they don't want to deal deeply into the issues, and they like the guy. So they do believe him. But I don't think the legislature is going to change. I think it's going to stay pretty much the way it is right now. I think the governor is taking advantage of a situation that he didn't actually create, but he certainly is sharp enough to take advantage of it. And that's that there is no cooperation, little cooperation, between the Senate and the Assembly. There's always been a friction there. There's always been an argument. Now, I was down there for 18 years. There's always been an argument about who gets to move on which bill first, who gets the headlines, who gets the television coverage. But in the end, they would come together and say, okay, we've got to do it, whether the Republicans were in the majority or the Democrats were in the majority. That's not happening now. Too often, the House is going one way, the Assembly is going one way, the Senate's going the other. And the governor can always edge his way in there and take advantage of that disagreement.
Why is that? Is he the one fermenting that dissent, or is there ideological or party bosses? Why is that happening?
I don't think he's fomenting it. He sure is taking advantage of it. But you've got some egos involved, and you've also got that North-South split that always rears its ugly head. Senator Sweeney and his colleagues from the South have one set of ideas. Speaker Oliver, County Executive DiVincenzo, and their colleagues from the North have another set of ideas. And each one wants to be supreme. And the governor is in their way, and the governor steps back and said, hey, I'm just going to stand here and watch you guys fight it out. In the meantime, I'm going to tell people I balanced the budget. And they applaud.
So you're all sitting. I'm going to shock you and say I disagree with some of what I heard. Not from you. It's those liberal media at the end. So this comes down to, I'll agree with the context that the art of triangulation in modern politics is alive and well, and it is beneficial, right? To have a foil. It's always good to have a bad guy to point to. And one of John Corzine's problems is that he was unwilling to say they're bad guys. He did it once, precisely once, and it was in the first term. And it was on the first budget when he moved a cot into the governor's office and said, I will not move unless you raise the sales tax. That is a deal breaker for me. And he stood up, and imagine this. He stood up in front of people and said, I will grind this state to a halt. We will shut it down. The casinos will close. Bad things will happen because they will not raise your taxes. And the people said, that's decisive leadership, and I like it. Good for John Corzine for standing up for us. Mm-hmm. To raise your taxes. He won. He won that battle. They buckled. They got, we compromised half a cent for this and blah, 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 whatever. But he carried the day because he stood up and he showed backbone, and he stood up to them to pass a tax increase, something that everybody believes is the third rail. That was the last time we saw anything that resembled strong leadership and principled leadership from that governor. So having that triangulation here has been good for Chris Christie. Do I think for a minute that he would rather not have at least a Republican Senate, which would enable him to modify the Supreme Court a little bit, get a justice through? Of course I do. And I think the opportunity to do that is very, very great. Every one of those districts that those Senate Republicans are targeting is a district that Chris Christie carried in 2009. And if he carried it in 2009, imagine what will happen in 2013, how much more he will carry it by. They have recruited a class of candidates that is probably the best that I've seen since the 80s, to be honest with you. They've got folks who in one example near here, the 18th district, the mayor, Stahl, switched parties to run as a Democrat. The last time he was on the ballot was last year. He ran with President Obama and exceeded his performance in his town of East Brunswick, a nice swing town, by like 20,000 votes or 20 percentage points, something ridiculous. Just blew Obama away in his own town, running on the same ballot with him. You never see a down ballot get more than particularly a popular president like that. The second thing I think that Republicans have going for them is this Democratic Party is a mess right now. And think about, if you're a strategist, put yourself in the role of, I have to run the legislative races in these districts. And I've got Barbara Bono on my shoulder saying, we're running together, right? We're working together. Well, in many ways, the easy thing to do when you're running downwind, for the sailors in the room, is to throw your sail up and enjoy the wind pushing you along. So the best and easy thing for these Democratic senators to do is to say, I did this too. All the good stuff Chris Christie's telling you, I did that. I was part of it. And then you narrow cast a couple little, oh yeah, but I wouldn't have voted for that Planned Parenthood closing thing. I didn't like that. I'm for gay marriage. You pick and choose a couple of narrow issues to distinguish yourself, but otherwise carry with the wind. Run with the prevailing political winds. That's the nature of a politician, the easy path. So what are they going to say? How are they going to distinguish themselves? At the same time, you're going to have this tidal wave of Christie enthusiasm, and if the Republican candidates can find a way to harvest that a little bit, just even a little bit, in districts where he won and where they, in the last election, came within a percentage point or two or 1,000 votes or two, at the same time you're seeing depressed Democratic turnout because there's no enthusiasm for Barbara, and legislative candidates, all due respect, Joan, most legislative candidates, except for Joan, never create enthusiasm. They're unknown commodities for the most part in their districts. That's just the reality. So there is a big chance there, and this is going to be for the Republicans a tidal wave kind of dynamic. Now, if I'm not saying it's a foregone conclusion, but it's there. It's there to harvest for the first time in as long as most of us can remember, but some of you will remember longer. We have wind at our back in New Jersey as Republicans, and that is, we're always running headlong into the wind. And we come close, but we never get close enough. Now we've got the wind at our back. You've got a good message bucket. You've got discord, disarray. Talk about, Democrats are going to have a primary, it appears, for the Senate seat. That's going to draw more oxygen out. Fatigue will set in. There's really, Barbara's never going to be able to say, but I'm the more important person here. Never mind. Your election's in 2 weeks. We'll get to you then. Great, 2 weeks. Thanks. So I think there's a great opportunity, and if it goes, it's going to go big. There's an opportunity here.
Is he going to campaign for them? Is he going to spend money on them, on these Republican candidates?
I think so.
But if he does, and they lose, or one of them loses, he's going to be tied to a loser. He's not going to like
he'll
that.
impose a new truth, as he always does, and say, right? I mean, the governor, Walt said, he crafts a message. He doesn't craft it. He imposes it. This is how it is. Look at his answers to this. Why did you do this? Because it's the right thing to do. But I said it was the right thing to do. Move on. I'm not going to keep answering the same question. I mean, that's just the reality of how he runs the communications operation.
I mean, even stuff that you thought might stick to him, like on the Star Ledgers, when they questioned him on the Ashbrook contracts, the cost to transport it is absolutely irrelevant. You should not compare New Jersey to Pennsylvania. It is absolutely totally irrelevant. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. Why are you asking me to compare New Jersey to Pennsylvania? It's ludicrous. You can't compare one state to another. Oh, New York paid more? New York paid more? Look at this. New York paid more. New York paid more than we did. Look, we're cheaper than New York. That's relevant. Why is that relevant? Well,
because I said so.
We look good. You know, I mean, he's very good at crafting that message. And he does it in such a way that if you're not paying attention, you won't recognize that, the rules change from day to day.
And therein lies the nature of New Jersey. And every time I've sat in this room, I've pointed out the exact same thing, which is unless you're paying attention, I'll pick up on something Walt said, the vast majority of people do not pay that close attention. We don't live in a state that has... with all due respect to my friends at News 12 and New Jersey TV, we are stuck between New York and Philadelphia. Watch their news. Good luck finding something about New Jersey unless it was a mass murder or a fire, if you live in the Philadelphia area, or a bear. I mean, that's pretty much how you get, right? That's how you get on the New York or New Jersey news. So now you're left with newspapers, and all due respect to my friend Matt, he knows it as well as anybody. Painfully so. Fewer people rely on newspapers. We are it's this ephemeral sort of feel state, right? So getting into the details of these things, Barbara has a tough job. She's got to convince people that they're wrong. That's a hard thing to do in New Jersey. What you believe, you shouldn't believe.
And I'll tell you, I thought when Barbara Buono first announced and no other major Democrat jumped in, I thought she was actually uniquely positioned to possibly, pull off an upset. Because I was kind of thinking back to '88, and I was thinking back to, when George Bush, the elder, was coming off the highest ever approval ratings for president, coming off the Gulf War. And I was thinking, it had happened before. I mean, you had a president there.
92.
I'm sorry, yes, 92.
Yeah.
Right. 88 was when he won.
Right.
92, he's coming off the highest approval ratings, at the time of any president. And, the economy, though, wasn't great, although it was much better than what we had now. And so Clinton was able to, to run him down from behind. Of course, you had the Perot factor, which complicated that. But I thought, at the very least, this could be much closer than it appeared because at some point, Christie was coming off a real high off Sandy, which I thought was sort of like, the parallel to the Gulf War. At some point, I thought maybe the economy might even things out. It might at least be a much closer race than people thought. It doesn't look like it's going to be close. I mean, I know the conventional wisdom is that, an election doesn't really heat up in New Jersey till Labor Day, and we're only barely past Memorial Day. But Yogi Berra once said it gets late early out there. It is getting late early for Barbara Buono.
And it's going to get later. It's going to get later earlier because you're going to have a Senate campaign in September and the bulk of October, when traditionally, right? I mean,
it's debatable whether this. You can debate whether how much this Senate campaign in the middle of this election hurts or helps him. I mean, but it clearly is not good for her. I mean, I think we can all agree that. I mean, she's struggling with name ID and money, and now there's going to be a richer and more well-known candidate, who would either be presumably Cory Booker or Frank Pallone, probably one of the two, probably, even though there might be a couple of others involved, who are going to be campaigning at the same time, and they're not going to finish campaigning until a couple of weeks before her election. I heard some talk that it's possible that that they might campaign together a little bit. That's what one Democrat was saying. Maybe Cory Booker and Buono do a campaign rally in early October, and that.
And who do you think will get more applause?
But regardless, maybe that draws the president down here. That he wouldn't otherwise come, and it just. But it's not good. I'm saying it's not good for her. But I mean, they're spinning it. It's possible you can kind of make tie.
No, wait. Now I've got to put a Democratic silver lining in this. The one way in which it's good for her is that there is definitely going to be a Democratic groundswell for the Senate candidate, whoever he is, because I do think New Jersey people pay more attention to what goes on in Washington than they do in New Jersey. And we haven't elected a Republican senator since Clifford Case. And I think looking at Washington from a New Jersey perspective, you're going to say, I'm not sending down one of those guys. I'll send down another Democrat. So 3 weeks before the gubernatorial election, New Jersey Democrats are remembering that they're Democrats. And that may help. How much it will help, I don't know. But they may say around their own kitchen tables, you know, we're really not Republicans. We don't like what's going on in Washington. Let's not put more Republicans in office in New Jersey. It's not going to be a huge percentage of New Jersey families that are going to say that, but there are going to be more than there would have been without that election.
Who's going to be our next senator? Do you all think it's
Whoever the governor appoints sometime in the next 7 days.
Right.
Don't you think that the governor may appoint someone who is only going to be a placeholder? I had heard, my sources in Republican circles aren't as good as yours. Yeah, there aren't any Republicans in Hudson County. No, I had heard that the position was offered to Tom Kane Sr., but that he had not, at this point, accepted it. But that would be a very statesmanlike decision on the part of the governor. Tom Kane would absolutely do no harm, and it would certainly help Tom Jr. Next time around. But if the governor doesn't go that way, if he appoints somebody who's going to run, it's going to be somebody who puts either his state Senate seat at risk or her lieutenant governorship at risk or something major. So the candidates themselves may be thinking, I don't know. I don't want to go to Washington for a couple of months and then have to move back home and have nothing to do.
I think I agree. This is an interesting conundrum. I think part of it depends on sort of how the field of Republicans shakes out. I mean, you're hearing a lot of discussion of this Democrat says I'm in, this Democrat says I think I'm in, this one says maybe I'm in. You're not hearing anything on the Republican side right now. It's pretty quiet. The unique dynamic about this opportunity, well, I shouldn't say the unique, a unique dynamic about this opportunity is that the members of Congress get a free throw for the first time ever. Yeah. You always have to give up your seat if you're a member of Congress. So somebody like Rodney Frelinghuysen or Leonard Lance or Frank Lobiondo, those guys all get a free throw at this if they want it. We could see that happen. Normally, they go, I like my seat. I'm a good spot. I'm a cardinal in the budget committee or the appropriations. So that could change things. Originally, now 24 hours ago, I was clearly in the right move here is put Tom Kane Sr. in to hold it till 2014. He's a statesman. It gives you it gives the governor the ability to say, like me, he transcends politics. Here's someone who chaired the 9/11 Commission, walks into Washington, D.C. with instant credibility, relationships on both sides of the aisle. This will represent New Jersey well. That's what this pick was about. We'll be fine. We'll go off. We'll say, we'll have an election in 2014, and that gives him the ability to, and he won't run again, by the way, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, somebody had a different idea. So the Kane thing is clearly interesting, but, what are we talking now? 3.5 months. 3.5 months, this person will be a United States senator ostensibly, unless the governor selects whomever, the ultimate winner is. I think that there may be some, shockingly, there may be some out of the box thinking going on here. I mean, the governor could ostensibly think about a Democrat who would similarly say, I'm only here for 3.5 months. Unlikely, but it doesn't really do anything in so it's a 10-seat, functionally a 10-seat majority in the U.S. Senate right now. So is a 9-seat majority going to make a big difference in whether we pass immigration reform?
It's a wonderful way for someone to end a career, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, for the governor to give a gift to someone who's winding down anyway and be called senator for life. I mean, yes, I was a U.S. senator. You don't mention it was only for 3.5 months, right. But you were a U.S. senator. It's a wonderful gift that the governor has to give to someone, and it could look very statesmanlike.
He hinted yesterday that it's going to be Republican. I mean, he basically said
made that pretty obvious.
And I heard last night that both Kanes are out, that both senior and junior are either turned it down or said took themselves out. And that I don't know where that leaves us.
But it's still Walt Kane, so we can.
Yeah, I'm not planning to run.
Okay. Sean Kane, right. Walt Kane. We got keep going.
I have 24 names on my list on my blog. It's getting a little bit ridiculous.
I think certainly 36 hours ago, Cory Booker would have been the favorite. I mean, I don't think Las Vegas posts betting odds on New Jersey senators, but if they did, Cory Booker would have been the favorite. Is Booker still this
Yes.
morning the favorite? When all is said and done?
To win or to be picked? For
Not to be picked.
Okay, all
obviously,
right,
but
good.
to win.
To win.
Booker is clearly the media favorite. I don't know if he's the individual's favorite. Because, as you said earlier, people love their congressman. They love the guy that they normally vote for. So I think Pallone has got a chance. I think Holt has got a chance. Maybe even Pascrell would jump into it at this point. And he certainly engenders enthusiasm. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that it's going to be Booker. And that's why I'm kind of looking forward to an exciting Democratic primary that will make people remember their Democrats.
Are people going to leave the beach to vote in August in a Democratic primary?
That's a point.
Yeah.
Vote by mail, folks. I sponsored that legislation.
Well,
I'd say that, this a very abbreviated campaign period. It's going to come down to ability to raise money and some war chests in a large way. And Congressman Pallone has a nice, big, fat war chest.
More
right
than
now.
Booker.
More than Booker.
Right.
I'll also say that few people have spent as much time working the field as Congressman Pallone has. I don't care which statewide candidate it was, that guy showed up. And he didn't just work his district. He went to South Jersey, he went to North Jersey, he went to Sussex County. He reminds me in that way of the late Bob Franks, who spent a long time cultivating local relationships. Mayor Booker hasn't quite done that as much. The third thing I'd say to keep your eye on is inside of there are vulnerabilities when you scratch past the surface of Cory Booker being on Oprah, right? The Newark story still isn't a great story. This summer, if it's hot and crime continues, what's that going to do in the middle of August? How's that going to play in a primary? There's vulnerabilities on Cory Booker's part that everybody has looked past. I don't think he quite has the same cult of personality inside New Jersey as the governor does. He certainly has it, in Silicon Valley and at Oprah salon parties and things like that, and that's a nice resource to have. But at the end of the day, a primary is a family fight that looks more like a street fight. And let's see how the street fighters fight, because it's going to be and who knows where, if you have a three-way, and let's just speculate that it's Holt, Pallone, and Booker, what's the dynamic? Where does Holt try to position himself? As I said to somebody yesterday, did someone explain to him that this is an election, not a test? Where does he position himself? Whose votes does he draw from? Who is is he more liberal? I don't know him well enough to know sort of how that three-way dynamic plays out and who he takes from. But a three-way primary, for junkies, this is like, manna from heaven.
Holt could be surprisingly well positioned among those three. He would be the moderate, the most moderate to conservative of the three.
Christie said, talking about it for junkies, Christie said at the end of the press conference yesterday, he looked at the reporters, he said, "See, all of you who are upset about a boring governor's race, there you go."
And Tom, as you said, on the Republican side, there's been much less speculation over these long 36 hours. But
I attest that to discipline.
Does anyone have a sense of? Senator Dougherty's the only name I've heard of someone who said he was exploring it, and various people have said they're not, I gather.
The other names out there are Kevin O'Toole. He's the only non-white.
He said no.
He said no.
He said no.
He said no,
That's
and
not the way
that's the way it was reported somewhere this morning.
And Jen Beck said no.
And Jen Beck said no. I don't think she was ever really seriously considering.
Well, I have a name that I put out there before anybody put it out there because it was so ridiculous. But he now says he's interested, and now I'm thinking, hey, you never know. Al Leiter was a pitcher for the New York Mets. He's got name ID, and he could self-finance. He's got a ton of money, and he told ESPN.com last night that he's interested.
Wow. And that name has been floating around this party's circles for 10 plus years. Every time an opportunity opens up, he has a connection to one of the party leaders, a personal connection, and now's not the right time. Keep me on the list. Now's not the right time, though. But keep me on the list. This may be the right time.
Who was the conservative radio talk show host who was talking about
Geraldo?
Yeah.
Geraldo.
Well, you had Geraldo, threw his name out a while ago. You had Lou Dobbs,
Yeah, Lou
who
Dobbs.
lives up in
That's the one I
Sussex
was
County from
thinking of,
CNN, who runs the Moneyline show or something like that.
I mean, getting somebody who's instantly recognized might be the only way to beat, let's say, a Booker in a short
It's our
race.
Bill Bradley, Al Leiter, our Bill Bradley.
Who was the CEO? There was a movie.
Crowley.
John Crowley,
Crowley.
yeah.
Crowley.
Yes.
I heard his name
Crowley.
mentioned in the State House.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going back through the list of the last. We're told he is. I don't know that anybody. I don't think the movie did that well, frankly.
Let me ask a question then. If all of those people, even the ones we doubt, are interested, is there going to be a Republican primary, or will there be a single Republican candidate?
I was just going to say, Joan, that to pick up on that point, I have a feeling that we're not going to have a primary on our side. I have a feeling that there's going to be somebody who sort of is preferred, and that'll just be the way it is, and we're going to save our money and avoid the.
You're going to have to
the
teach us
fractious
Democrats
battle.
how to develop consensus.
First thing,
We've forgotten.
First thing is elect a governor who's a strong party leader, among other kinds.
Logistics issue, you have to get 1,000 signatures by Monday to even be on the ballot. And Republicans were saying last night it's a lot harder than it is for Democrats because they say, Democrats just go into a city, and they get everybody walks by, where you can't, Republicans can't do
We
that.
call a mandatory meeting at headquarters and you sign it and you walk in the door.
Right. In exchange for
Do the signatures have to be Do the signatures have to be distributed in multiple counties, or
No.
they can all be
No.
from Hoboken?
No.
for
It's
instance?
1,000 statewide.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you've got a big family, you're all set.
Well, let's open this up. Do people have answers? We've had questions already. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there any legal steps that can be taken to counter what the governor has decided to do in terms of setting up a timetable? The screaming and hollering that it's going to cost $24 million to run these 2 extra elections. Anything out there?
You
Anything
probably
stirring?
know that.
Well, I know.
24 hours old.
And I know the Democrats, Wisniewski, as of yesterday, was saying that he was already talking about litigation, and one of the arguments that they were making legally, because I don't think wasting money is actually a strong enough argument. If you could do that, you could litigate over a heck of a lot of items that government spends on. But I think the argument they were using was that if there was any sort of contested outcome on the Senate race that required a recount, you would not be able to then get the governor's race and the legislative races to happen on time. If you had to do a recount of the October race, you could not have the November election.
Yeah, the courts have not.
So based on that, there was talk that might be the basis.
The
of a
courts have
challenge.
not traditionally ruled in favor of those who say, yeah, but it could happen.
Right.
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 I'm not a lawyer. I spent a lot of time as chairman having to deal with election law. Our statute is pretty definitive in the regard that it gives the governor an awful lot of authority and power. What it wasn't definitive in is whether the election had to be this year or not. And just to kind of balance things a little bit for a moment. Everybody says, the governor's decision was very political. This was all about politics, this decision to have this. If anybody thinks for a moment that the advocacy for an election in 2013 is not as political on the Democratic side, I think let's just be balanced here and at least acknowledge that everyone, whether intentionally or unintentionally, is advocating a position that inures political benefit to themselves.
I'm wondering if the
if you
Democrats are
appointed
having-
somebody
It's not
through
all about
14, that
the
would be
great
political too.
high-minded civic. We
Right,
should have this
right.
election in November.
But I'm wondering if
because-
the Democrats are having any regrets about that bill that was presented a
never
couple
got
of
done.
years ago, to say that the one who fills a vacancy must be of the same party
That Cody
as the
wouldn't
one who
post it.
vacated, and Cody wouldn't post it. So I wonder, if he's mad at himself this morning, or if the crowd of other people mad at him.
So I think the short answer to the question is I don't think so. I think the Democrats are going to look and they're going to kick tires and they're going to find it, if there is. But litigation's expensive, and at the end of the day, I think their prospects for winning that are extraordinarily thin, and therefore probably won't be even pursued.
Also, the word politics gets treated as a dirty word, but if you're talking about scheduling an election, that ought to be a political decision. It's about politics. But Ruth, what were you saying?
We're recording for today for the website, so if we could just pass around the mic for anyone asking questions and just introduce yourself, and then we're on mic 1.
And this way we can all see how wrong we were a week from now.
Tomorrow.
And they'll
I'm
use
used
it
to
against
that.
us if we ever run for anything.
Right. Ruth?
Ruth Mandel. Tom, I just want you to make some comments about the Kanes, because that one really, it fascinates me. I thought that Tom Kane Sr. would not be willing to do this, even though we all thought all the things you described about who he would be and what he would represent. He wouldn't be willing to do it, whether for a couple of months or until 2014, because he is interested in his relationship with his son and his son's career. And everyone knows that Tom Kane Jr. thinks of his future in terms of a Senate seat, and this is an opportunity that's not going to happen very soon again. So to me, the dynamics there, and then I was thinking, well, if the governor appointed Tom Kane Sr. just for a few months, I was thinking of this yesterday, would the voters then, would Tom Kane Jr. benefit, in a sense, from name recognition? Because people, oh, it's Tom Kane, I'll vote for Tom Kane. What kind of name? But then it's a Republican primary, and Republican voters presumably know the difference between the father and the son. Nonetheless, I find this, there are lots of things in that story, both on the family side and in terms of the party, because you can't really mention another name on the Republican side that everybody has assumed is going to make a Senate race after what happened with Kyrillos in the last election. So I want you to comment on that.
I agree. You went through the same analysis. No surprise that I did, Ruth. This is exactly that, which is my gut told me that it would benefit Tom Jr. to have Senator Tom Kane, Senator Tom Kane, and that it would give people a reminder that, wow, this guy was something special here in New Jersey. And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. To hear that Tom Jr. has decided, I'm not going to go for this. I mean, listen, Senate seats are pretty rare. They don't come up very often. If you think you might, this is the time to do it, because it's going to be a long time, well, at least till 2014, till we have another one on the ballot.
There's another aspect of this, because Tom Kane was part of a panel in Newark last week of 5 former governors, and when asked about Christie running for president, Kane said, well, the party ought to come running to him, but right now my party is nuts. So, for Governor Christie to put a pro-choice liberal Republican in the Senate for even 5 weeks is not going to help him with some parts of the Republican Party should he run for president. So that I
make the point is that on that 2016 question about, well, you really got to put somebody conservative in there to appease the rest of the country's, primary base in Iowa and New Hampshire. And I said, give me a name. We don't really have a whole long list of conservative Republican office
Garrett,
holders.
God help us.
Yeah. Right. I mean, okay. Jay Weber, Scott Garrett, Mike Doherty, and that pretty much is it. As I wrote yesterday and got in trouble with
Bob
one
Smith.
conservative Chris Smith, that you could list all the names on half a Post-it note, one side. A name I heard yesterday floated out there, Mike Ferguson, former congressman.
That's a possibility.
Certainly more conservative, had a great fundraising ability. As a candidate, skills were awesome. You could see that as a potential candidate. I think that as I said, if you're making a decision now that I'm not going to go for a Senate seat, I think for Senator Kane, part of this comes down to I got some wind in my sails. I might actually get to be Senate president come January of next year if the governor's moving on, moving out, moving up. Even if he doesn't move on out and up, 4 years, maybe I run for governor in 4 years. The evolving dynamics of all this is ever evolving. So,
well, I also think that the Tom Kane Sr. Appointment makes more sense if it's through 2014. If it's through 2014, then maybe Tom Kane Sr. could take that position. He has a year and a half, sort of in there. And then that name recognition, and then maybe Tom Kane Jr. runs to succeed his father. But as you mentioned, it's sort of a freebie for anybody who wants to run this time. For Kane Jr. to try to run this time, he's going to run.
It's
again.
more complicated.
He'd be running against
federal
people,
office for
right?
a state
There
legislator.
are probably going to be people who are going to be better funded and better equipped and more likely to beat him. He's not a strong candidate this time around against this.
I keep thinking
field.
we're going to see a member of Congress, but I'm just
if the timing worked, Christie could appoint that guy who's the interim senator of Massachusetts, and he could just come down and stay there.
Move down the hall.
All right, if we did see a member of Congress, how does that seat get filled?
It's another special election.
The governor can appoint someone to fill that seat too.
No.
It's the same statute.
I thought Congress is different than Senate.
It's the same statute that governs and controls in New Jersey. It's the exact same statute.
No, I
We've been two sections of the same statute we've been pointing out.
No, I don't think so. I think it's a special.
Nowhere in the country that a governor can appoint a congressman.
Right.
No, nowhere in the country can a governor appoint a
It's
congressman.
different for House than the Senate.
So when,
Specifies the Senate.
so when Corzine appointed Menendez, then there was a special election that resulted in Albio Series rising to the House. So I think, so we'd get to have another morning after. That'd be good.
Tom, we can.
Oh, good.
Does the governor even have to fill this short-term, practically irrelevant seat?
He doesn't have to.
That's what I thought. And then, are there any other women other than the lieutenant governor that are seriously being considered?
There are other women out there. I mean, whether they're being considered, a name somebody pontificated about last night was Michelle Brown, who is a friend of Christie's, who is now the head of the Economic Development Authority,
Yeah, I
who
don't
got
see
into that. But he had this loan issue with him during the 2009 campaign, but everybody else, like Jen Beck, apparently is
Right.
out. So
I
there
thought
are.
Jen Beck was a strong choice, but she seems like she's not interested.
The other one is Diane Allen, moderate Republican who ran for Senate briefly once before. So that's another female, but there frankly aren't a lot of women or minorities in the Republican bench.
So it's down a little.
I think our populist governor has been brilliant so far until yesterday. And when he hit his Marie Antoinette moment, and that was when he said, I don't care what it costs. And this is ammo that taxpayers are going to revolt against. I mean, after all, we figured out it would cost each taxpayer or each person in New Jersey at least 3 McDoubles or 1 Whopper. For this.
Only on Dollar Day, man.
Well, a McDouble is always $1. But, outside we were talking about how to save us money, and I suggested, well, he could appoint somebody who we all love, and that is the boss. Appoint him, and then Tom Wilson suggested
But I think he lives in Arizona these days, doesn't he? How about John Bon Jovi?
Bon Jovi.
He's still
He's
here.
available.
Yes, he's still here, but you suggested, how about his best new friend, Jim McGreevey? Said in jest, of course, but I really think, the Dems have finally been given some real ammo to connect with taxpayers. I don't care what it costs, as long as my election is secured in November.
Right after he said that, there was a headline in the Weekly Standard, Christie, I don't care what it costs. And it was under on the website, under an ad for Christie's campaign saying, Christie, I stand for fiscal responsibility. and the Buono campaign, to their credit, took a picture, a screenshot of that dichotomy and sent it out to reporters. So it could come back to haunt him. But we were talking about, I mean, when he's got his, he didn't say that initially. He said, he kind of couched around it, but it was after 2 or 3 questions about the cost. He's like, I don't care what it costs. He doubles down, when he's got his, when he's challenged, and that's exactly what he did yesterday. And that, it certainly could come back to haunt him.
There are a lot of sound bites over the last few years on tape that you would think could come back to haunt him, but they don't. I mean, people like him, and people find it refreshing, and people just think he's being real.
Well, I think the allegation that what he did was purely political and what have you, as Tom said, of course it's going to be political. But I mean, even if it's over the top political, New Jersey people kind of expect that. It's okay to be a scoundrel if you're a lovable scoundrel. Don't take our money, but if you're going to do something else that's overtly political or overtly crazy, go ahead, because we think you're great about that.
Sue?
Well, it's really only 12, actually, because there would be a primary regardless.
Right.
So
we still have 2 elections.
No,
it's an extra. He's wasting per se 12.
The 12
only
million,
because-
because if you moved it on election day, you'd only have a primary.
My
Right.
wife looks at the polls, and I said, next year you can make 800.
Talking about polls yesterday, this is Susan Letterman. I got a robocall from Cory Booker at 6 o'clock at night urging me to vote for Sheriff Froelich in Union County. So he's doing some grassroots stuff.
It's true. Yeah. No, in the last few months, he's really like gotten into the trenches.
Interesting.
Did it come at 4 a.m.?
Oh, there was
No.
Okay.
After I voted, though.
You know, it's interesting. I interviewed Booker a week ago, and publicly, as late as a week ago, he was, you know, he still, when I brought up the Senate race, he still predicated his answer with, well, I still haven't officially said whether I'm running. I'm still just exploring it. You know,
What, he's got 5 days?
Right.
I mean, I guess he's going to have to now make that official.
And he
but,
has
but
tape-
everybody knows he's running.
But
I mean, there's no real
he
secret
also
there.
has tape to deal with of saying that I promised the people of Newark I'm going to stay for the full term.
Right.
That was in his youth video saying I'm not running for governor was because I need another year in Newark.
Right. Right.
So
Gregory.
John, Gregory Hall. My question is concerning the Democratic chairmanship and and all the activities that are going with that. We've all talked about the Democratic Party is in a mess. How does Mr. O'Donnell correct all of it and galvanize the Democratic Party as he goes into the elections?
He follows Tom Wilson's playbook and does as a party chair.
I don't think he can. I mean, the bosses are against him, and I mean, he might win the chairmanship, but this is like super insidery stuff. But next week there's going to be this big internal fight within the Democratic Party to select the next chairman. Jason O'Donnell, and it's only for 5 months, right? I mean, right. And tradition dictates that the gubernatorial candidate chooses who will be the chairman through the election. So Buono has picked Assemblywoman O'Donnell, who was part of this coup against essentially the party bosses, and Sheila Oliver as a speaker, and Senate President Sweeney a couple years ago. So the bosses are totally against this guy. Sweeney has overtly said he's dividing the party. I don't want this guy at all. And supposedly there's going to be an alternate candidate floated, and there's going to be this big, in the midst of all these other elections, the Democrats are going to get in a room and fight over who's going to be party chairman for the next 4 months.
I don't think
and where will
they
the
are.
Senate
I
where will
don't
the
think
Senate
they
candidates
are.
fall on that question?
Yeah,
too?
I think what's going to
need their
happen
lines.
before they vote on the Democratic Party chairman is they're going to count noses. And they're going to say the North has more votes than the South at this point, and O'Donnell will become the chair. And a lot of people are saying it's only for a couple of months, then we'll do what we want. But I think this now, with the new elections coming up, is more impetus for the Democrats to get together and say, we don't need to squabble right now. Let's at least look united, whether we are or not. But the challenge for Jason O'Donnell, or whoever's the chairman, is much higher now. He's got to raise money for a Senate candidate, as well as for a gubernatorial candidate. And the money is not flowing into the Democrats because people want to bet on winners, and they don't see them as winners in the gubernatorial contest. They might, however, see them as a winner in the Senate contest. So maybe it'll improve the fundraising, but it certainly raises the bar for how much he has to raise. But I think he'll get it, and I don't think there'll be an overt fight.
Why did Buono pick this fight?
I don't really know. They have rapport, but I know that several of the other names that were floated out there, such as Joan Curry, were not eager to get into it at this point. So I don't know what her other choices were.
I don't think she would say she picked the fight. I think she would say, I'm the party's nominee. Right. I picked the chairperson, and they're these men who run the party are trying to mess with me again.
And that's part of Barbara's leadership, which she clearly does demonstrate. She's fought Senate President Sweeney. She fought Governor Cody. You know, she wants what she wants as well. It's just she's got a little bit of that feminine problem there that if she says it as loudly as Chris Christie says it, she looks shrill, bitchy. You know, they always say that about women. Men are strong. Women are petty. So she can't say it as loudly, but she really is just as strong in getting her opinions and making snap decisions.
You raise a great point, and so I'm going to kind of pick up that way, move this way, which is whether she picked a fight or not, I think she is trying to exert leadership on her own and establish herself as, I'm going to surround myself with people who want to be part of my team, not a bunch of folks who are just looking to protect their own hides, right? So I need to, if that means picking a fight, so pick a fight. Joan, you're absolutely right in that, and what's puzzling to me is why that has not been part of her narrative to this point. why she hasn't put up and said, look what I've gone through. Look what I've suffered to stand up for what I believe in and to be a leader, right? When nobody else got into this race, who said, I'm in, right? When they threw me out as majority leader because I wouldn't play ball with them, where is that narrative? Yeah. You're running against the guy who has got the king of all, I'm a bold leader narrative, willing to do what I think is right, and she's done nothing to
and there's a natural gender gap that she can take advantage of. Christie's now leading among women, but before Sandy, that wasn't the case. Yeah. And if she played that card, so to speak, yeah. I mean, it could be really advantageous for her. I agree.
And the boardwalk is open, but there are still a lot of people out of their homes, and they should be highlighted in some way. I know nobody wants to use the tragedy to make a point, but nevertheless, we can't pretend everything is wonderful at the Jersey Shore. It's not. It's only, again, surface wonderful. Walk the boardwalk, but don't go 2 blocks in.
Barbara? We didn't talk about Barbara Bono's lieutenant governor. I wonder what the panel thinks.
Are you volunteering, Barbara? Nice bipartisan ticket. That's brilliant. Right. Brilliant move.
Actually, she's a friend of mine, so maybe I could qualify.
The all Middlesex ticket.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard a lot of names, and most of the names I've heard not coming from the campaign are Barbara should run with someone who represents a minority. Perhaps someone's African American, perhaps someone who's Hispanic, and what have you. I don't know. That's a good thing. We certainly need more diversity in the state, but it also places a somewhat heavier burden on her because there are a lot of people who I see them in Hudson County, I hear from them in Hudson County, still don't like the idea of a woman in charge. And having a woman in charge and a minority next, that's really a heavy lift for some people.
I just don't know how much Lieutenant Governor matters. I really, in fact, my photographer, Anthony Coco, who I work with on a regular basis on the investigative unit, has always suggested, sometimes we try to do lighter, featurey sort of pieces, in the guise of an investigation, just sort of as a change of pace. He's been suggesting for a couple of years now that we ought to take a photograph of Christie doing a speech and Kim Guadagno next to him and walk around to strip malls and just ask people, who is this person? And he believes that more than half people would say that it's his wife and not the lieutenant governor. Because he thinks that the majority of people in New Jersey do not actually even know who the lieutenant governor is. I hope he's wrong, but
no,
I don't know.
She's a very smart woman, and she does well what she does.
I think she's very good, but I'm not sure whether. But I don't know whether people know who she is.
Yeah, she stands behind him, staring adoringly at anything he says. I mean, she doesn't wear the red suit like Nancy Reagan, but other than that, it's the same role.
Well, if maybe there are people in this room who know who the Lieutenant Governor of New York and Pennsylvania are, but it's never an office that people particularly know.
Of course they don't know who that person is.
Would it be a good career move for someone to be her running mate if asked? If you're a vicious Democrat?
Not for a legislator, because that would mean you couldn't run for re-election. Right. I'm interested in the idea of a woman. I mean, have you ever seen
that's not true, right? That's not true, because Loretta Weinberg ran for her.
The Senate wasn't up.
She wasn't up that year?
She ran with Corzine.
But she was
she not on the ticket?
She ran for lieutenant governor with Corzine.
The Senate wasn't up that year.
But let me ask you a question. If the governor were to say, well, New Jersey really needs a woman in its congressional delegation and appoint the lieutenant governor as the interim senator, who takes her place on his ticket?
Dick Cody.
Talk about out of the box.
But if you believe that he's running in 2016, I mean, you probably want to stay lieutenant governor.
Yeah, true, but he has to have a lieutenant governor on his ticket in 2013.
Right.
You know what else he wants? He wants nothing different, right? He wants to not create opportunities. And if you remember back when he sort of said, "I'm running,"
right?
Oh, and somebody said, "Well, what about the lieutenant governor? I'll talk to her next weekend about it."
Right.
Yeah. And everybody thought, "Oh, well, this maybe it means." And I said, "No chance, because she is a known entity." To the extent that she's a known entity in terms of having been vetted, anything that could be known about her is known about her. There's no potential vulnerability. There are no surprises. So what's the one thing Chris Christie doesn't want? surprises. Somebody new, no matter how good your vetting is, oh, I forgot about that. There's always a little something that could pop up. And so for those reasons, unfortunately, I happen to adore the Lieutenant Governor. I think she's an incredibly bright, articulate, talented, aggressive woman, but I just don't think she's going to get a fair look because of that, because he doesn't want any surprises on his ticket.
I saw a National Review article just a day or two ago about Christie, and supposedly nationally Republicans are mad at him for doing things like accepting the Medicaid expansion, embracing Obama and whatnot. I'm sure anything can change in 2016, but this could be a critical decision, whatever happens for him. How is he doing on the national level with Republicans? I heard him talk at a State House press conference. He was asked by 3 reporters something about the Tea Party, by 3 different reporters in a row, and he basically said the Tea Party was irrelevant. This was like 6 months ago. That could come back to get him in primaries, I would imagine.
I think his biggest challenge, if he, assuming he runs in 2016, is going to be getting out of that primary. I mean, the Republican primary has devoured candidates who do not have that real hard conservative, true believer sort of mindset, and it has tended to drive, the McCains and the Romneys so far right that it's crippled them in the general election. So that'll be the biggest challenge that Christie faces if he tries to run.
I just think he's so good rhetorically that, on stage with these guys, if they try to get him for, let's say, embracing Obama, he's got that way about him. He says, I had half of my state was in the dark. I had not a single school in the state was open. And here's a guy, regardless of what time of year it was promising to come in and fast-track funds to me. He made a 10-minute rule that every cabinet member got back to me. I was able to call him in the middle of the night, and he was the only guy who was in a position to save the citizens of my state. And that's what a leader does, and that's what I did.
And to suggest that I should have made the politically correct decision and put at the risk of my citizens, I wouldn't do that. I didn't do it as governor, and I wouldn't do it as your president.
There you go.
Yes, we're all good, yeah.
Can you tell this guy used to work in communications?
Hi, Judy Stern. I'm wondering, a completely different issue. Why has the Christie's decision to pull out of the tunnel, and I think there was a loss of funds in the process, why hasn't that come back to haunt him? Why seems to have died as an issue in this state?
It was fairly parochial. I mean, the people who would have benefited from it were from a relatively narrow corridor in North Jersey. Most of the people in the state didn't see it as an issue that concerned them, but they're glad to see that there is money being put into repairs of the transportation infrastructure. So that the trade-off, I think, went pretty well. The Hudson County people, where the hole in the ground was, they felt it badly. But most of the other people in New Jersey don't commute by rail to New York City every day. They didn't see any real benefit to it.
And the benefits of the project, if it had gone full speed ahead, were many years in the future. So it was, I think, harder for it to be tangible to people who would have benefited from it.
I also think his argument about who would have paid, when the project went over budget resonated because every project goes, way over budget, and I don't think anybody had faith that one was going to be the one in a million that didn't.
And Democrats aren't talking about it, so he's got no opposition forcing him to explain it away anymore.
The simple answer is because nobody really cared,
right.
And in an electoral sense, voting is an incredibly selfish behavior. As much as we like to think altruistically about, I want to do all this other stuff, and it's a selfish exercise of what do I think is best for me and my family and my community. And I think for the vast majority of people, that you talk about. I bet you more people know the name of the lieutenant governor than can tell you that the name of that project was the Arc Tunnel and it cost $300 billion. I mean, that's just that's so far in the rearview mirror of life in New Jersey that it might as well have happened in the Corzine era.
Ruth?
Yeah. I just want to respond to, because I've thought about this a lot. I want to respond to what you said, Tom, about why hasn't Barbara Buono put herself forward as a strong leader and used, actually, her record here in terms of that. This is based on nothing. I'm just speculating. I don't have any inside information.
That's what we're all doing, boy. It's okay. It's all right.
But it seems to me that what's happened over there, well, let me say first that one of the things about Chris Christie, in addition to everything else that's been said, is he has a group of people, a small group of people, who work with him, for him, know him well, who are very smart, who are incredibly loyal, and who know what's going on in New Jersey and nationally. He's got a team like that. Brilliant, dedicated people who loyalty is a huge issue. I don't know that she's got anything like that. She may be building up some supporters in this race, but that's just one, it's just one point. They know him. On her side, she's got to introduce herself to the state, right? And what it looks like to me, and I've thought this ever since she started doing this race, it's a canned message. It may be true, but it's the sort of national...
The daughter of immigrants, blah, blah, blah.
Right, exactly. And and I think it's imported. That is, I think she's, if I had to put money on it, I would say she's got some people who are not New Jersey people, not close, fierce, loyal supporters who know her, people who are not New Jersey people who have told her, this is how this is the best kind of narrative to build, and they've put it into ads, and she's on message constantly every time she's interviewed, every time I've seen her interviewed.
But it's
on the national media.
Fact-based message.
It's a fact-based message,
and
but
emotional is what you need. The emotional appeal to counteract Christie.
It's a fact-based message, but it's the one that's kind of the default national message for Democrats right now.
Joan is right.
All candidates use professionals from outside of New Jersey. I mean, Camilla was was an operative elsewhere as well. It's just that I think Christie's people do it better. I mean, they're just more skilled at it.
I think it's very dangerous to use outside people for a state race who don't really know the candidate or the state well. It's just risky. You end up, it's like consultants. We can talk to you at Rutgers about consultants you bring in who don't really know the culture or the university. If you don't really know the candidate and the culture, you've got to do something that works in a package. You push a button and it's a kind of message.
So in an election like this, where the vast majority of people are not inclined to even consider an alternative to Chris Christie, right? The re-elect question.
You've got to break through.
You've got to find some reason to say, take a look at me.
Right.
I'm the daughter of immigrants, and I voted for this, and that is not a breakthrough message.
No.
They punched me in the nose, and I got back up. They threw me out because I dared to speak my mind and lead, and they threw me out.
I think you're right.
Yeah, that says, oh, wow, okay, you're not just some other can of corn on the shelf.
Although I can imagine someone getting into a real, but you can use that, but against him?
She's throwing a long ball no matter what.
Right.
You might as well throw the one that has half a chance of getting caught, or at least the best prospect of getting caught. Doing the same thing and running the can of corn campaign, as you sort of are describing, isn't going to get you noticed, isn't going to break you out, isn't going to give somebody a reason to say, I ought to take it. Wait a minute, maybe I should listen to what else she has to say. Right now, she's just another...
Tom, to use the analogy, they're not throwing deep at all.
They're not.
I mean, it's 4th and 50, and they're not throwing deep. It's
and
4th and 50, and they're running a handoff and hoping they gain 50 yards.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe it'll break.
But you're saying she would say, "Oh, they threw me out. I was the majority leader. They threw me out." But that's Democrats that threw her out. Can she run that?
Yes, I took on the party. I stood up. I did what was right, not because my party said I didn't.
But then she's not getting those donations.
She's already won she's not getting them anyway. Right. She's already won the primary. There was nobody else who stepped forward and said, "I'll take it in the neck."
It's something that she talks about all the time. It's not as if she never mentioned that.
That's true.
Right.
I mean, Governor Whitman is a bit of a contrast.
She can do the classic running as the outsider.
She took it in 1990 to run against Bill Bradley. Came within a whisper because of the dynamics having wholly nothing to do with her, and then parlayed that. And in '93, they all sort of said, "Oh, the boys said, oh, that's a good candidate because she got that close." And who else? And she parlayed that, and part of her messaging was always, "Look, certainly privately her messaging was, the old boys don't like me. I know that. They're not my friends, and I don't really care about that. And frankly, I'm just as happy they're not my friends. But if you want to move ahead, you need to be bold. You need to sometimes stand up for what you believe. Look, this is a woman who had a veto overridden by her own legislature, right? So she wasn't afraid to tangle with that crew, and they weren't afraid to tangle back. And it was good for her to say, we can disagree. I'm going to do what I think is right.
I agree with you completely, Tom, on the strategy. The only thing I would worry about if I were the candidate, God forbid, is that the issues over which she split with the caucus were those that are so traditionally Democrat. It's stereotypical. It ties her to the tax and spend stuff.
Well, I think we've milked a lot out of this primary election, and
it's a much better state now, isn't it?
Right. And two things I want to make. One is, I don't think, and no one's doing anything wrong, but it's just remarkable that Senator Lautenberg's funeral is still a couple of hours away. And he's Jewish, so he has funerals pretty quickly after he dies. Mm-hmm. And the amount of political, not just speculation, but of events that have occurred in the last 48 hours is really.
But isn't that in a way an ultimate tribute to him? I mean, this
I think so.
This is a guy who loved politics,
right.
And maybe he would love this.
Right. Although to think that he's irreplaceable and it'll take 3 days.
Certainly a guy who relished a good fight.
Right.
And boy, is he has left us with a good fight.
I think all of us at this table and in this room relish a good fight too.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting that the chief speaker, the first and foremost speaker this morning at his funeral, is Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
Talk about not getting away from politics.
And even more interesting is that he'll be transported to Arlington via Amtrak.
Oh, is that right? Oh, that's nice.
True.
Right, it is New York.
But he's stopping at his transportation center in Secaucus.
Right.
Yes.
To transfer to the Blue Line.
And nobody's smoking on that train.
Right. And the only other thing I wanted to add is to that with the exception of a passing comment by Ruth, we've had an entire session here without mentioning basketball or sports or Rutgers, and we're very grateful. So thank you all for coming. Thanks to the speakers.